And the other good thing that's happening in the Valley, in my 25, 30 years here, it's become a lot more diverse. So you're seeing a whole lot of ethnic restaurants. I mean, we have Turkish, there's all sorts of Middle Eastern, you have Thai, you have Korean. There's a Venezuelan place opening in Allentown. I mean, Venezuelan, there's a El Salvador restaurant in Bethlehem. I mean, pretty much every ethnicity is represented here in the Valley, which wasn't the case back in the 1990s when I moved here. In fact, my wife and I, when we 15 years ago, we wanted to celebrate something big, we'd go down to Philly, for a nice meal. And now we don't even think about it. There are places in the Valley that we haven't gone to yet because there's so many different options. And that's just exciting. It draws more people in.
What's up, everybody? You're listening to the Poorly Edited Podcast live on WXLV, the X here in Schnecksville, Pennsylvania. If you're not listening in Pennsylvania for some reason, thanks for listening, I guess. We're the show that likes to put a spotlight on the most creative and interesting minds that we can find, the very best a couple college kids can do.
Not very well.
Not very well. It's great to be back. Has it been a month? Has it been an entire month since we've been at WXLV?
No, I don't think it's actually been that long.
Because Memorial Day
and then couple weeks, I think. We've been so busy and we've had so much work to do, and we've been working with Danny, and we've just the company is over. Lab 212 has failed.
Yeah, it's been going great. It's been going cool. We had so we met George Robb, and then he just wouldn't leave, and we just kept running into him. There was that whole him digging through the trash thing, and we met this guy through him who has a show all the way out in Princeton, and we went to Princeton, New Jersey for the first time. We walked around on an Ivy League campus as if we were students, but we were actually literally just walking around.
We racked up a lot of debt in that trip.
Yeah, you're right. Just by being at Princeton, we went into debt, but that campus was actually incredible. I'd never even seen pictures of it or anything like that.
It was absolutely gorgeous. And you could just tell why they call it the Ivy League, because you walk around and there's the most beautiful ivy ever.
There's no way that's why that, right?
That's how they call it the
Someone
Ivy.
Please tell me that's not how that works.
That's why, because there's ivy.
I went to a community college. There's nothing wrong, but there's a difference between community college and Ivy League school.
So if we throw some ivy on the side of LTRIC, is it an Ivy League?
What I'm saying is I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know.
I would like to say that this is the Harvard of community colleges. So if we do throw some ivy on the wall, then it's basically an Ivy League community college. Am I right?
Josh and I were just talking about film tricks we learned going to school here. So I think that's what counts, right?
Yeah, but then we talked to Kenny, and Kenny was like, LTRIC isn't anything compared to, what school was that?
He went to Full Sail. Real quick. I mentioned Josh. Josh is filming today. I totally forgot to introduce ourselves. We are actually more than just the Poorly Edited Podcast. My name is Coffee Guy.
My name is Amresse Farrow.
My name is Patrick Lilly.
And today we're here with the great Drabenstott.
You got it.
All right.
Welcome to the family.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome.
So you have a show on WDIY, actually. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that real quick? Just a quick, maybe an appetizer version of it.
Yeah, it's a show called The Inside Dish, which celebrates and explores the Lehigh Valley food scene, which has really come a long way since I moved here in 1990. It was really kind of not so much of a food desert, but just a place where you really couldn't get a whole lot of interesting ethnic food. There weren't a lot of great restaurants, but this place has really taken off, especially in the last maybe 10 or 15 years. And this is a chance to explore and celebrate that and get the stories from the people who are behind all this great food that's being produced.
Yeah, and that's the thing about food. There's so much culture and history kind of just right under all that. So we're going to dig real deep into all that stuff. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Real quick, though.
Speaking of food.
Our intro song is by Food Truck.
Wow. Did you plan that? That's really funny.
I did.
Wow,
and I just like that EP a lot.
That's why we pay Pat nothing. So, yeah.
Wait, you guys are getting paid?
No, definitely not. So like I said, I'm pretty sure it's been 4 weeks or something like that. So is there anything that major that's happened that we want to talk about besides maybe Princeton?
Well, filming in Princeton was amazing. And then today, on Monday, we have our BCPI episode coming out. So filming in Princeton was with Eric Mintel, the jazz paranormalist, which That's just absolutely amazing. So that episode comes out today, and that crossover episode is really amazing. So if you want to listen to some spooky stuff that comes along, Daniel Roebuck was back in town. We've been working a lot on his new projects. There's a lot of really exciting new stuff going on there that we can't talk about just yet. What else have we done? We've been working behind the scenes on a lot of stuff.
If we can't remember it, it's probably not that important.
Yeah, well, Pat's car broke again, so I drove Pat here today. And,
Really?
Several times.
yeah, it was
where
nice.
you guys were?
Yeah, no, I forgot to
Really?
mention that. Sorry. Yeah, it was nice. So you got to shoot with Pat for a little while.
I moved out of my house this week.
You did,
I
yeah.
moved out of my house. So that
Voluntarily.
You got to make sure to qualify it. Right?
So my lovely house, which has hosted
Voluntarily, air quotes. Sorry, go ahead.
my lovely house, which has hosted every member of Lab 212 for the past over a year and a half. My landlord sold it. It's gone in all of our house shows, and we've had the most amazing house show, and it was Plume's first time there, and we shot the whole moving out process because everyone in Lab 212 was so wonderful to help me move out, except for, of course, Zach, because Zach doesn't do anything to help others.
Yeah. You guys didn't even ask.
You knew what was going on.
I know. And I want to make it clear. If you asked, I would have come up with an excuse. But
Yeah, I knew you wouldn't have come, so why would I ask?
that was smart. You saved your time. Like, why bother? So,
Exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
Every time I call you, you just hang up on me.
Well, I mean, I listen to what you have to say first, and then I hang up. Because
Really?
usually like, you want to hear about my dream? And I'm like, no, not at all, actually.
I did call you the other day. Oh, okay. That's what exciting thing happened. So I was moving out of my house. I had to give up all my worldly possessions. I dropped them off at Goodwill. And as I was dropping them off, this old couple opened up the hatch of their car. The only thing in it was a Spectrum guitar, like this brand new Spectrum guitar. And I was like, hey, I like that guitar. And they just handed it to me and drove off. And so then I called Zach and Pat, and I was like, who wants this guitar? So we got a brand new guitar in the Lab 212 family.
So you turned it down?
Did you take it?
Yeah, I took it.
Okay, well, that's what
Yeah, I called Zach
I'm like,
first.
Amresse, I have like 8 guitars.
I also
in
assumed
my
you had better
apartment.
guitars than that.
Well, yeah, and listen, I have like 8 of them. Most of them I don't even use. I have an apartment. I'm trying to downsize. I'm like, Pat's learning
if
the
you're trying
guitar.
to unload some guitars.
You can move in with
Yeah,
us.
you know what?
We should say it on air.
Well, see, that's why I hang up on you, because you asked me. Yeah,
Can we talk about food soon? 'Cause I'm hungry.
for sure.
So I found out about Mike when I would volunteer at WDIY. So I'd go over there, and people were always talking about, what guests Mike had on recently, and he was talking about all this food. And for you probably don't know much about me, but I am the biggest foodie, and I'm constantly annoying everyone to go to really nice and expensive restaurants and try every new thing in the Lehigh Valley. And they're like, no, we're poor. Let's go to the Bell again. That's Taco Bell for
Big
people
fan of
that
Taco
aren't.
Bell. They're doing great work over there.
I thought you meant Bell Hall for a second.
So we didn't get the chance to meet for like the whole past year, and I would see all these great episodes that you were doing, and finally I was like, well, I just have to reach out to him because he has to come on the show. And you've interviewed everyone from Bolit to Zest to Yakos, so every different types of price range and different food from like American to Malaysian. So please, let's talk about your most recent discovery in the food world of the Lehigh Valley.
Well, my most recent discovery, and I have to say, I think the last 3 times I've been out in the Lehigh Valley, I've been to this place in the south side of Bethlehem called U&TEA. It's an authentic Chinese place. And I mean, there's stuff on the menu that you don't see in your traditional Chinese restaurants. Noodles, soup dishes, but just really crazy ingredients, neat preparations, and you walk out and it's not quite the bill. But I think my wife and I got out of there for $30 with the 2 of us with an appetizer, and the food is just downright fantastic. Real, again, authentic type things that you don't get at the Americanized Chinese restaurants. And I love that place. And I told my wife, this is the last time we're going for a while because there's so many different options. But it was fantastic.
When you mean different options that you don't normally see in other Chinese restaurants, can you give us an example of that?
Oh, sure. Like, they have a lot of hot pot dishes, a lot of casserole dishes, right? So, with the hot pot, you got that rice sticking in there, which becomes caramelized. You have all sorts of vegetables. They have lotus root on the menu, and they're not ashamed to put it on there. Where, you go to your normal Americanized Chinese place, you're not getting lotus root or any of these other things. A lot of tofu options. You have duck, lamb, things like that.
I can already tell this is like this is going to be too good and then too bad, because like we always go out to eat after this, and it's like I'm already hungry, and the whole show's going to be about great food.
Yeah.
I'm always bothering you guys to go to a new restaurant and try something new. So this is a terrible episode for us to have, because now I have way more excuses and more restaurants to annoy people with.
Well,
so thank you.
You got to go to U&TEA.
Except he's a professional, so I trust him.
And I have not had them on my show yet, so I'm looking to get them on the show to get the inside dish on U&TEA and how they happen. I think they've been there maybe for a year and a half or 2 years, probably as a response to all the international students at Lehigh.
Yeah.
So as you bring more international people to the Lehigh Valley, you start to have restaurants that cater to their food needs.
So I have a question for you. I didn't exactly ask you how this whole thing works. So you have your show, The Inside Dish, and that's a monthly segment, right?
It's a monthly. I do 2 segments a month.
Lehigh Valley Discourse, right?
Lehigh Valley Art Salon.
Lehigh Valley Art Salon. So you do that monthly. So how does that work exactly? Do you kind of undercover show up to the restaurant that you find, and if you like it, you reach out to them? Do people reach out to you? Do people, offer you a free dinner or something like that? Or is it a combination? How does that work when you're reviewing food?
It's a little bit of everything. I really don't do reviews where I'm not talking about the quality of the food. I really want that inside story to find out how they came to own a restaurant, what inspires them, what challenges they faced as either restaurateurs or brewers or winemakers or farmers. I've talked to a lot of farmers as well. I'm looking really at a comprehensive food scene in the Lehigh Valley. And the segments are only 13 minutes long. So, you can cram a lot in 13 minutes, but I really look to get to the core of it pretty quickly.
That's great that you do that, because, not only is just what you're doing in general interesting, but, with you always have like competition. It might not be like competition, but you always have to try to find ways to set yourself apart. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're doing. You're doing more than just being like, they make good food or they don't make good food. Finding that story is so key to what food is.
Well, and to do, I think, a really good job of reviewing a restaurant or reviewing food, to me, you have to go 4 or 5 times.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. Why not?
And most
really?
Yeah, because what happens if you get a dud the first time?
That is quite a lot. And you just go there yourself and you.
Well, see, I don't review restaurants. I'm looking for that inside story. So I might go 1 time, I might go 2 times. Honestly, some of the places that I've talked to, I've only been maybe once in the last 10 years, but I know of them from other people talking. But when I'm looking for the story behind the food, the story behind the restaurant, it's not important for me to go and eat there 4 or 5 times. I would feel that would be an obligation if I were going to tell other people about the quality of the food and the quality of the experience.
That's
so I
amazing.
try to stay away from, we talk a little bit about that, but I'm more interested in the story than I am about the actual, on a scale of 1 to 10, or how many stars do I give this? None of that stuff.
So it's really the whole overall picture for you. It's everything that's involved. What's one of the most amazing stories that you've heard from a restaurateur, farmer's market, or a winery or anything like that?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've been doing the show for 3 years now. So that's, more than probably close to 50 some guests. We had the guy from Josh Early Candies on, and he's had people tell him that when they delivered candy to this woman in the hospital, that helped save her life. Gary Iacocca from Yakos. They said I think it was his grandfather opened it up because it was, this Italian woman came by really attractive and said, "Do you sell hot dogs here?" And he had a regular store. He go, "No, I don't sell hot dogs." But a week later, he was selling hot dogs. Right?
Wow.
That is
origin
probably,
story.
That is probably one of the best stories I've ever heard for somebody that wanted to go out with somebody. It's like, well, I built a whole hot dog empire just to get a date. Now, did he get the date?
He didn't get the date. He never saw the woman again. But I figured, he's probably just increasing his odds for the next one coming by, right? I learned from Josh Early Candies. They use recipes that were used back in the 1940s and 1950s, and they keep them in a locked box, and only the owner and his son, have access to that. And same with Yakos, that special sauce. You have Gary Iacocca and one of his sons know how to make that sauce, and that's it.
Wow.
And
the woman, right?
Pardon?
The woman that asked for the hot dog. She also knows.
She was never fortunate enough to.
She came back. She would have.
Yeah. So those are the sort of things you learn, and you're learning how people got into food in the first place. To me, is fascinating. I think food is one of those professions you get into, because there's one point in your life, either a family moment or a moment growing up, that was really the catalyst to get into it. And I want to kind of find that out, because from there, everything else springs.
In your experience, what has been that range from professionalism to, being an amateur that you've seen, somebody on a very professional scale that, went to all the fine schools versus someone that started a huge empire as an amateur? What are those two different things look like?
Well, a good example is, Jaco is the guy was, running a store
Just trying to get a date,
Yeah, right. Just trying to get a date. On the 600 block of Liberty Street in Allentown, and decided to start making hot dogs and built something from there. And on the other side, you've got people like Chef Chismar at Bolit, who went to the CIA, the Culinary Academy. Talked to several of the chefs in the area who've gone through the CIA up in Hyde Park, New York.
We'd like to mention isn't this like the Culinary Institute of America? It's not the actual CIA.
That's what we've been told to say, at least.
Yeah. By a masked agency. Pat, do we have time for a couple more questions? Or do we have to go to a break or something?
How about we throw the break in right now?
All right. So when we come back, we're still going to be talking about food. Believe it or not, we have a whole hour
We're hungry.
of this kind of stuff,
Yeah,
and I'm excited.
So grab a snack,
I'm
and
very
we'll be right
hungry
back.
Natural peanut butter, salt, honey, and bananas.
Oh, right on.
Big old Drabenstott. Huge.
We can't leak that on here, though. That's too big for this program.
And we're back with the Poorly Edited Podcast.
All right, so we were just talking during the break, and I really want to bring up a lovely restaurant here in the Lehigh. Where do we live?
We live in the Lehigh Valley, some of us.
I had a stroke. So it's called Bolit. It's absolutely amazing. Chef Chismar, what is it?
Chismar, yes.
Chef Chismar. So Bolit is the most amazing upscale restaurant, and it's great for brunch or dinner or having a drink or whatever. But please tell me a bit about their story and about that chef.
Yeah, Chef Chismar is a Lehigh Valley native. He went to Salisbury High School. We had him on the show, I think 2 or 3 months ago, and actually did some back-to-back episodes that we couldn't fit it in 13 minutes. We wanted to talk, much longer than that. He went to a culinary school. He actually, his father worked for the predecessor of Sodexo, which was the wood company. So doing food service, and he was a food consultant there and is still in that business. So he got into the restaurant business early, working in restaurants, and tried a couple other paths in life and kind of said, why am I fighting this? Ended up going to culinary school, and from there went out to San Francisco, worked very prestigious restaurateur out there, spent 5 years in Boston. And his dad kept bugging him, when are you going to come back to the Valley? When are you going to come back to the Valley? And finally, he bit the bullet and decided to open up Bolit and bring, this national class, world class food to this area. And not just with
he did.
Not just with Bolit. I don't know if you've been to Mr. Lee's Noodles in the Easton Public Market. He has a ramen place.
Mr. Lee's, it's the one when you walk right in.
It's off on the
over
right.
there to the right. Yes,
Yeah.
I have been there.
That's
and
him.
It's amazing.
So you can get ramen from a James Beard, semifinalist, national caliber chef, and it is just a revelation every time I go there.
I just had ramen for the first time when we were in Princeton, actually, and it was delicious. It was very good.
Ramen
So
in and of
I'll have to
itself
go on
is
my list.
wonderful. Go to Mr. Lee's and you're going to be like 2 steps above. It's
if
crazy.
prepared correctly. We're not talking about like packaged ramen noodles.
yeah,
We're talking about like ramen.
I've been eating that for years. Come on, Amresse.
I think the craziest part about ramen that people don't get at first is like the broth is just like by itself is like a trip. There's just like so much
Honestly,
going on there.
The noodles were my least favorite part. I think if you do it right, then maybe that should kind of be what you're expecting. I don't want to necessarily.
Chef Chismar puts a bunch of funky stuff in there. He had a Pennsylvania Dutch ramen the one time, which I didn't try. I'm usually eating the veggie stuff, but the broth there is just it's elegant, it's deep, it's earthy, it's so wonderful. So maybe from here, actually the public market isn't open on a Monday. You have to wait till Wednesday.
It's not. Yeah.
And then of course
that's not to be mistaken with the Easton Public Market and the Easton Farmers Market, which I messed up. They're two different things. The Easton Public Market is inside, right down the street from the Cradle Factory.
How many markets can one town have?
The Easton Farmers Market, which is outside. Both absolutely worthwhile going to, but know that those are two separate things.
And the Easton Farmers Market in Center Square on Saturday is the oldest continually operating farmers market in the whole country.
Wow.
Really?
That's crazy.
It's like 260 years old or something
awesome.
like that. Yeah.
I did not
Now,
know that.
they had a couple lean years with just a handful of vendors showing up, but now you go and it's like a celebration of food every Saturday. Prepared foods, you have local farmers, you've got beekeepers coming in for honey. It's just a really neat place and a neat experience. And Easton, the Lehigh Valley food scene has improved so much over the last 10 years, but Easton is like a foodie paradise. It's crazy.
It's amazing. And there's Chef Chismar. Chef Chismar has that ramen place, and then going inside of Easton Public Market, a ton of other things in different price ranges. But going back to Chef Chismar, what I love about him is I love when restaurants will constantly change their menu. And I know that's hard for people because if they don't have the chance to go there, then the menu's they heard about something they want, then the menu's changed. But I think that some of these places keep the same menu for 10, 20 years. They never change it. But he's constantly adding new things, constantly changing the menu. And when kind of gastropubs and places like that do that, really gives the opportunity for you to show what's in season, what you get out of those farmers markets, having the freshest ingredients possible. So when you go to restaurants and you want something really delicious, look for a constantly changing menu, because that way you know that they really care about their food.
Well, he was farm to table before farm to table became a cliche or kind of became an expectation. So he has great relationships with a lot of the local farmers and purveyors that, a lot of them will come to him first and say, what looks good to you? And he'll pick the freshest ingredients. In fact, he said one of the things you learned in San Francisco from the restaurateur out there, he said, start with the best ingredients and don't screw them up. Right?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So that's
how could you go wrong?
Well, exactly. But you can go wrong by screwing them up.
Yeah,
sure. Trying to do too much with them or not putting them together the right way. But that's all about technique and knowing about balance and knowing about preparation. But I think that's good advice for any of us who are cooking at home. Find the best ingredients and don't screw them up.
That's something that we don't really talk about very much, but farm to table is a huge thing in people's lives, and it's really amazing. And we actually live in an area that is very easy to do that as compared to many other places. We have so much beautiful farmland, preserved farmland, farmers markets near us that you can have a very, cost-effective farm-to-table lifestyle if you want to do that.
That, and we're not so urban that you can't grow some of your own veggies or something like that. That's
Absolutely.
something I've been wanting to do over the past couple of years, even just on a real small scale. Like, I just want to see if I can grow a pepper. I just think that'd be cool as something
one good
Zak
pepper.
grows a pepper. That's a new vlog series that we're going to do.
If I could get one pepper, I just think
Wait, are we
that'd be
talking
cool.
bell? Are we talking jalapeno?
Oh, yeah, I would do a bell pepper.
You'd bell?
Yeah.
Which color?
Green is probably easier to grow. I don't know.
That'd be
Yellow
more
or
impressive
red?
than like a habanero.
Okay.
It's like as big as your thumb if you had one of those. I don't know.
But
a big
that
bell.
thing packs
Big
a punch.
That's
though, the
huge.
habanero.
Right.
Sure.
Well, I will say I live in the west end of Allentown. My lot's all of 20 feet wide, but I have an herb garden in the back. I do a lot of cooking at home. So for me to go back and get some basil or some thyme or some rosemary, it's just steps away.
Right.
And it's fresh.
Well, let's talk about the Lehigh Valley Drabenstott restaurant. What's going on in your kitchen?
Oh, my kitchen. First of all, I love to cook. My wife always says she's the luckiest woman in the Lehigh Valley. I cook a lot of ethnic foods, a lot of Indian food, a lot of Thai food, a lot of meals where I've been cooking for years. I use cookbooks when I need to, but a lot of things I just kind of throw together. Made some nice chicken mole this weekend, which was great. Yeah.
And where do you get the mole sauce?
I use a recipe that's in Cooks Illustrated. If you're not familiar with Cooks Illustrated, it's a magazine that comes out every 2 months, and they painstakingly experiment with different types of dishes until they come up with the perfect thing. Now, mole traditionally might take 24 or 36 hours. Yeah. This one takes 30 minutes. It's fantastic.
And it's still really, I'm always really wary of recipes that call for usually something that takes 24 or 30, like a very long time of that preparation. But when you have a faster version, I'm usually kind of apprehensive. So how can you tell when looking at those recipes what's going to be good and what isn't?
Well, anything that's from Cooks Illustrated is amazing. I've been
not sponsored.
Not sponsored. In fact, they don't take any advertisement in the magazine.
Really?
So you can be sure of the integrity that they have. I've been reading Cooks Illustrated for 15 years now, and anything that I've ever made out of there has been A+, almost a restaurant quality. Chicken tikka masala, my wife said it's better than Indian restaurants we go to.
So when am I coming over your house for dinner?
Come on over.
Indian food is my absolute favorite food. I got, last night, I got Navataram Kurma last night, and then I got, what else did I get? I got malai kofta, I got chicken biryani, and then I got lamb vindaloo last night for dinner.
Yeah, well, I make a good killer chicken vindaloo. I've got a big bag of basmati rice there. I like making lentils. So there's so many cuisines out there that I can't really specialize, but I'm going to keep a jar of ghee. The clarified butter, I keep that in the cabinet. So I guess once you have ghee in the cabinet, all bets are off, right?
I'm so happy.
Earlier, you talked about how part of what you're doing when you have these guests on is kind of try to figure out where they started. Now that we're talking more about you and your kitchen, how did you get into all this stuff? How did you get into food? And then how did that eventually turn into you doing your show?
How long have you been eating food?
How long have you been eating
roughly
food for?
Yeah, well, I was weaned at, I think around 6 months.
Okay.
My mother started.
It's just been going off.
Well, that's back in the 60s. We used a lot of chemicals, a lot of formula and things like that. Breast milk wasn't huge back then, but I think once I got off breast milk is when I started with food.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
I hear that's how it works for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think for most. My family cooked a lot growing up. My mother cooked a lot. We didn't go out. My grandmother, who was Slovakian, Hungarian, cooked a lot of traditional dishes, cabbage rolls, halupki, goulash, soups. And she was very proud of what she would make. So that was part of my upbringing in terms of having that food exposure. I worked in high school and college. You're going to laugh. It was a yacht club on Lake Erie.
Ooh.
But Lake Erie is a pretty big lake. So that gave me some exposure into a little bit finer food. Mm-hmm. Maybe not. It's more of a country club food, so it was pretty traditional. But I got to learn what Chateaubriand was and different types of chicken preparation, different types of seafood. When I came to the Valley, it was the early 90s. There's a little bit of a recession. There weren't a lot of advertising PR jobs. So I was working in a restaurant where coincidentally, the other three chefs that were there, I shouldn't say the three chefs that were there, I was a waiter. One was Blake Morgan from Morgan's, which is right down the road from the studio here, right?
They have the most amazing brie quesadillas ever, just by the way.
Yeah, there's a guy named Patrick who left there to work at the Striped Bass, which was a big restaurant down in Philly, which no longer exists. And the third chef was Sean Doyle, who runs Savory Grill up in Seitzelsville, which is like Bolit and Savory Grill are like, to me, the two top restaurants in this area. So between the three of them explaining to me what food was and what made food good, that was the best experience you could ever have. And I felt uncomfortable serving something unless I could try it.
Sure.
Unless I knew what was in it. And not all people were like that. So I got a great appreciation for food.
So I'm so glad that you actually brought that up. So when you're in high school and when you're in college, you always need some extra side money. And everyone would say to me, serve, serve, serve. And I never, ever, ever wanted to serve because I never wanted to serve something where I was embarrassed to walk in the back of the kitchen, or I never wanted people to see what was in the kitchen, or you always hear these horror stories and you don't and I would go to these restaurants all the time and I would ask my servers because I genuinely wanted to know, what did you like on the menu and what do you normally eat? And what I would hear all the time was, I don't eat here, or I would hear, I don't like the food here. And it's so, I would actually hear that all the time. And I was appreciating their honesty, but that's just not something I wanted. And I actually did end up serving for 2 years. I served at an Italian restaurant that didn't have any freezers or anything. And they would only serve like fresh food and everything like that. But that's something that is so important that I think that you shouldn't work at a place unless you really need the money. But ideally you wouldn't work at a place that you didn't believe in, that you didn't believe in the food that they were putting on people's plates and bringing them to the table.
Well, anywhere you work, you want to believe in the product.
Yeah.
And you believe in the product by understanding what's going into it, the preparation and the ingredients, and also about the flavor profile, what things go with it, to be able to recommend wine options or beer options with things. Those are the servers who are really doing a good job. They really add to the experience and help you appreciate the food more so than taking an order and bringing it to the table. There are times I tell my wife where I'd like to go back and be a server again. And it's about sharing a joy for food. Mm-hmm. And the servers who are the best, they share that enthusiasm for food with you. and they improve the experience more so than just providing good service.
Absolutely. It's not just about the chefs, and it's not just about the building that you're in and the pretty bar. It's about those people that are the ones serving the food and giving you that ambiance and experience, and navigating your experience there with your food and what you're going to pair it with and those desserts and all those different types of things. And that started for me when I was very young. You know, my story is that I was raised by a single mom, but my mom is an amazing cook, and she would make the most elaborate meals for me. She would make me like chicken cordon bleu and chateaubriand and all of those different things. She would make me absolutely anything. And we had this rule in my house that even when I was very little, I wasn't allowed to lie about anything how I felt. So if I didn't like something, I had to tell her, and I had to be very, very brutally honest with her. And she said she wanted to become a better cook, and I had a very very good palate. And when I was 9 years old for my 9th birthday, she took me to New York City, bought me a cooler, and took me on a gourmet food excursion all over New York.
Oh, yeah.
And we got to go to Cinderella's, and we got to get all of these, amazing things. And she let me pick out pastries and all those different types of things. So growing up with that kind of background of my mother being like, food is such an experience. It's not just a thing. It's not just like a one time, but you're going to remember the smells, the people you meet, the taste. It's such a well-rounded experience that if that's what you're interested in, you don't want to skimp on those experiences.
Oh, I totally agree. And, look back at some of that wisdom that my grandmother and my mother gave me, and those things that I've learned from, Chef Morgan, Chef Doyle, and all the chefs and farmers and everyone that I've met through the show, to give me a deeper appreciation for what I can do in my own kitchen and how I can enjoy things when I'm out. And those are actually some of the questions I ask, a winemaker. How can people who are listening get a better appreciation for wine? If you come to the restaurant and you haven't tried Malaysian food before, how can you go about trying that? What are the sort of things that would be a good introduction to start understanding? So we want to educate and give people the tools so they can become better consumers of food and the restaurants in the area.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we got to go to a break real quick. We'll be right back. This podcast is sponsored by Relevant, a location-based mobile network personalized by your interests. Customize your newsfeed to consolidate all the information you care about all in one place to quickly and easily find what's relevant to you. Find out what's going on in your local area and reach your community from the palm of your hand. Relevant is available on iOS and coming soon to Android. Be the first to know with Relevant. And we're back. Poorly Edited Podcast. Zach, what were you saying in the break?
So, we were just talking a little bit about how a bunch of our friends here, excluding me, are actually going to be taking the leap and moving out and having a place together. And they're in a situation where, they've cooked before. We've all cooked some pasta.
I've worked a stove once or twice.
We've worked a stove once or twice, but, they're kind of just beginning to get their feet wet with having to cook for themselves every day, and also struggling with maybe not having the kind of money to make whatever they want. So what kind of advice would you have for people who are just starting out? They're just starting to cook for each other. They might not have a whole lot of money. What do? So they don't eat packaged ramen every night. Because it will happen, I promise. If this advice isn't good enough, that's what you're condemning them to.
Actually, we're all busy. My wife is a tennis coach, so she's home late. I get home late. You don't want to sit there during the weeknight and spend an hour and a half preparing food. I tend to prepare things on the weekend when there are going to be leftovers or components of the meal that I can put together quickly over the course of the week.
Right.
For example, if you're cooking chicken breasts, as opposed to making enough just for the people at the time, make double and keep them in the fridge. So then you have a basic core protein that you can chop up and put on salads. You can chop them up, put some Mexican spices on them, open a can of beans, a little bit of salsa, and maybe an avocado, and wham, you have a burrito. I have a rice cooker, which for $30 is one of the best inventions ever. I'll cook double the brown rice that I need. I keep the unused portion in the fridge. Fried rice, 15 minutes. Chop up some vegetables, put whatever in there, crack an egg, and I'm done, right? And maybe that comes for me from 20 or 25 years worth, but whenever I'm making something, I'm thinking, how can I do it once and use it 2 or 3 times?
Yeah.
Also, if you're busy and if you do eat meat, to me, a crock pot's a great invention.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. Absolutely.
I was trying to actually. I suggested that when we were talking about last night, like slow cooker meals and stuff.
Yeah.
And I got like shot down. And
I accidentally
didn't know what was
just threw
going
one
on.
out the other day.
Well, you can get a pork shoulder for $2, $2.50 a pound.
Yeah.
Cook it in there. 7 pounds of pork shoulder, and you're probably looking at $15 or $16. You can make barbecue out of it, but that meat, it's a protein. You can make that into burritos. You can make it into tacos. You can make it into nachos or do whatever.
Yeah.
Once it's there and once it's done.
Using that bone broth is also really important to make soups. I cook with quinoa and rice and all those different types of things. Using bone broth to me is really important. I've just found that having a kitchen with a good base is really important. Having your spices always there, having just like vegetables, fruit, like milk, those products that you could always keep in the house, like, garlic, shallots, all those different types of things that you can always keep in the house, weekly or bi-weekly, go to farmer's market or produce junction or something and get some cheap, good vegetables. And having those things makes it so much easier for when you have a recipe. You only have to go out and get a couple things to make it happen.
Well, I'm a regular at the Allentown Farmers Market every Saturday from around noon, or from 10 o'clock to noon.
So we know where to find you.
Yeah, I always say I'd be one of the easiest people to murder, but don't have any ideas, right? There he is. It's 10:05. Let's whack him. It's the produce man.
Do you make a lot of enemies in this game?
No, not at all. Not at all. In fact, I've been going to the market for 20 years. They know me by name. They tell me what's good. But you start seeing things, and the more you go out, you start seeing combinations of things, right? And you start learning very simple preparation techniques. I mean, very simply to steam something or blanch something like a vegetable really quickly, and then chill it in water. You keep that in the fridge too. Like I made green beans last night, real simple, but I made double. So right now there are blanched green beans in the refrigerator. If I want to get home tonight and make green beans, just put a little olive oil in the pan. Saute them, a little salt and butter, done and done.
Yeah.
Right?
What is your suggestion when you find something that you want, but the item itself is a little bit more expensive? I know that sometimes I like to cook with things like if you want pine nuts, you want certain fish, you want fresh scallops, you want a nice fillet or a roast or something that isn't super cheap, like grabbing a chicken or something. What is your suggestions? Is it just look when it's on sale? What is it to get fresh food that's good tasting, but also not going to hurt you that much?
Yeah, I'd save up and wait till it's on sale, and otherwise just get used to the other things. But if you came over and I made fried rice tonight, it's probably a dish that's $2.50 a person.
Oh,
and
yeah,
you'd be
sure.
extremely happy with it.
If that.
Yeah, right. It depends if you have meat in there, or if you
Right.
want to put some shrimp in it. But usually I'm doing it veggie style. I've got some tofu, just throw that in. You can eat well and eat inexpensively if you know what you're doing, and then you can splurge if you want to get a fillet, or you want to get some. Well, I saw Chilean sea bass. It was $25 a pound. It's more expensive than a fillet. So there's certain things like that. Or love making crab cakes. I make them once a year because jumbo lump crab is $25 a pound, right? And luckily my son doesn't eat that. It's just my wife and I who are digging into that. But like pine nuts, there's really no replacement for pine nuts. If you want to make pesto and it has pine nuts in it, you can use walnuts, which will be okay because there's basil and there are other things in there. But if you want to garnish something with pine nuts, there's no replacement for pine nuts.
Yeah.
Making like a nice couscous with pine nuts or something. And I mean, walnuts are delicious, but walnuts do change the flavor of a good pesto from pine nuts. It's a little bit more of an earthier flavor that you'll have. So there are those things that, that like pine nuts. When I was younger, they were like, it's like peanuts. It's like not that expensive. And then recently it's like $15, $20 a pound for a few nuts. It's like, and then that's what you're going to find. You're going to find these classic recipes of delicious things that require certain ingredients that have just skyrocketed in price.
And again, I'd say save up, make those things once a year for a special occasion, and enjoy them. But in the meantime, there are a lot of things you can do with less expensive ingredients too. Like we were talking about pork butt in a crock pot, or to make it adobo style where you marinate it for 24 hours in a combination of vinegar and garlic and onion and oregano and things like that, and put that in the oven or on the grill. It's fantastic.
Pat, who shot down the crock pot thing? I got to get to the bottom of this. I can't
Chandler
think
was
straight.
one of them.
I knew it.
Chandler shot that dude?
Josh, what'd you? Josh,
I
is
just
iffy.
like to say that in the middle of me moving, having to get out like within hours, Chandler forced me to like hide a grill somewhere, like my grill, so we could get my grill back. There's a long story with that. DM us if you want to know the grill story. So how dare he shoot down a crock pot, which is so much easier to move
you
than a
just chuck
grill.
everything into a pot and then you let it sit for like 5 hours.
Chandler, if you're listening, you're fired.
I will say, as much as I like the crock pot, things tend to start tasting the same after a while.
Yeah.
So you have to look at some different recipes. I did a pork butt once, Chinese style, that had some fermented black beans in there, which is a specialty item you can't find at Giant. But I ordered them online and things last forever. So it had a bit of that, some sake, it had some sugar in there, and then I reduced down the sauce that was in. And that was a lot different than what you might get with a typical pot roast or a chicken that's in there. So you need to be a little bit more creative in the crock pot, simply because the flavors all tend to meld together and you get that crock pot essence.
like having that there so you can have more variety. Like for me, I've been cooking for myself for a couple years. Variety is so important because it doesn't matter how much you like something. If you eat it too much, you're going to hate it.
Right.
So having that larger repertoire of what you can do and the different tools you have to make it so important.
But if you try not to do too much with that, if you're making a protein like a meat or a chicken, and you take off the extra meat and you keep that in the fridge, well, then again, you have that base, and you can do something Mexican with it. You can do Thai noodles and stir fry those noodles. As long as you have that chicken that's done, that'll save you a whole lot of time. Or make a nice chicken sandwich, but put curry in with it, maybe a little bit of apples. I like to cook as much as I like to eat, obviously.
I think it's just really about versatility, and it's all about imagination. Like if you are, just limitless with your imagination and don't put any borders or walls up of what you can and cannot do, you could experiment with some amazing things, and you're going to make things that taste terrible and you're going to do it wrong. And that is the beauty of it. And I just watched Julie and Julia the other day, which was really nice.
That's a great movie.
It's a really great movie, and it's about Julia Child and the woman that read through Julia Child's cookbook and cooked through every single thing on that. And it was just, and I would watch these, it got me into watching more about her and how she'd get so excited even if she messed something up. And she's like, it's okay. And that's what it's about. It's about that love of food and having so much fun and that versatility. When I was little, my mom bought me these big slabs of Himalayan salt blocks, because when you grind up that pinkish orange looking salt, it's actually a huge slab of salt. And I would cook with it, and I would put it on the grill, and I'd make kebabs on it, and you do sashimi on it and all those different types of things. And it's the things that you can find that aren't that expensive or really expensive. It's kind of like what they say in fashion. You mix some low end pieces with a few investment high end pieces. It's kind of the same with cooking. It's you take your kind of low end price foods and you mix in with your high end things, and it's all about that imagination. And if it's something you care about, you're willing to spend a few extra dollars for it sometimes. Pat, Zach,
I do have a question about that. Is Himalayan sea salt worth it? Like the pink sea salt? Because I work at Giant. I spent 5 minutes yesterday trying to find that for someone. So I want to know if it was worth it, or if I just wasted my time.
So I'm sorry, I'm a salt expert.
No,
there's so many different types of salt. There's black salt, there's Himalayan salt. I'm a huge salt expert. So if you get it already,
I'm just salty
Wait,
in general.
Can you name a fourth kind of salt, please?
There's iodized salt. There's
kosher salt.
There's kosher salt. There's habanero. I have a ton of salt in my car right now. There's habanero salt.
Truffle
there's chili.
salt.
There's chili lime.
Oh.
There's chili lime salt. There's Pinot Grigio salt. I have Pinot Grigio and Pinot Noir salt in my car right now.
All right.
So getting the grinders, that can be a little expensive, but if you don't mind taking a cheese grater and buying a slab yourself, you could just grate the salt yourself, and it's way cheaper.
Right,
you
but
could
is
get
it good?
It's delicious.
Question.
It's absolutely
what's
delicious.
different than regular salt for Himalayan pink salt or whatever?
It's the texture. It's all about the food you're making. So it depends on what you're making and what you want to put it on it. It all depends.
I mean, compared to traditional table salt, I think it's better. It's what I buy.
It's way better, honestly.
But I mean, please
Some of them
take it away.
Some of them have I would say, a cleaner profile. I'm a big fan of kosher salt, but there are certain dishes where you can put larger sea salt crystals on. You get a crunch with it that provide this flavor explosion. My daughter, who's 21, started following in my footsteps cooking. There's certain things that she'll make that she only wants sea salt on it because she wants that little bit of crunch and the flavor. The black salt has a different feel. I've been to higher end steakhouses where they actually serve 3 different types of salt in front of you. And you can take a little cut of meat and try it with each salt. And each has a little bit of a different flavor profile. The black, which I think like a lava type thing, it has like more of an earthier flavor to it. Some of them are cleaner, some a little bit more mild. But I think one of the worst salts to have is just normal iodized salt that comes in the cylinder. I mean, rather than that, just get kosher salt and you'll be a lot happier.
There's a restaurant, I want to know if you've reviewed it, and I can't even think of the name right now. It's a restaurant, and like people always have weddings there, and it's...
Can you give us a type of food they serve there?
Shoot, it's like really high-end food. There's a hotel there. There's farms. There's
Glassburn.
Yes, the Glassburn. And they serve black salt, which I rarely ever see, especially around here. So have you reviewed that, and what did you think?
I haven't had them on the show before, but I appreciate you bringing them up because I mentioned Bolit and Savory Grill. I'd have to put Glassburn in that same category. Yeah. I've been there twice, in addition to going for weddings and receptions, and they're people that understand local food. They have a farm right there on site where a lot of their vegetables come from, and even some of their proteins.
Yeah.
And they've always had great chefs there too. So I'm glad we had this talk.
Yeah, absolutely. They are amazing.
We gotta go break real quick.
Wow, just jumping right in there. Wow, you couldn't even let her finish a single sentence. That was
Would you like to?
That was brutal.
No, it's okay.
Can we get an ambulance, please?
And we're back with the Portrait Podcast. I have a little... Wait. What were you going to say?
Just staring at you because you cut me off before the commercial break.
You said it was fine. We can't come back to it not being fine now.
It wasn't fine.
So if you want to... So let's say you want to take somebody on like a food tour of the Lehigh Valley, and it seems like you have and from where you're coming from, it seems not to be like necessarily quality of food, more like the story of it.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you like boil down the Lehigh Valley in like 5 restaurants-ish? If that's even possible.
Awesome.
Good question.
That's an awesome question. Well, also for me, it is about the quality. Part of it is about the story, but it's not so much the focus of my show.
Right.
But quality is really important. I probably wouldn't interview someone who has really crappy food. Okay. Okay. You need 5. I would definitely go for a Middle Eastern place in Allentown, maybe somewhere like Damascus that really celebrates the Syrian community, since we have a real strong Syrian population. I would definitely go to Bolit and get something from Chef Chismar that also has some Pennsylvania Dutch undertones, because he really cares about the local food heritage. And this isn't traditional shoe fly pie or chow chow, but he uses a lot of Pennsylvania Dutch ingredients, and that kind of gives you the flavor of the area. Well, I would definitely take you to U&TEA, since that's my current place to go. I'm actually going to cheat a little bit and say go to the Easton Farmers Market, where not only can you see food from local farms, but also local food purveyors. I mean, you can get Middle Eastern food there. Little Miss Korea is there, so you get Korean food. You can get a whole variety there. And then for a 5th, I would, instead of going to a food place, I'd probably go to one of the local breweries, since we have a really good craft beer scene here in the Lehigh Valley, given our size. And find someone who's been here for a while, maybe going over to Funk, or maybe over to the Separatist in Easton. Okay. So many good options.
All right.
5 is tough.
That sounds amazing. Yeah. I want to ask.
I probably should have written those down.
Well, we could watch it back, Pat. We have this footage now, so we can watch it. So we know that you did an interview recently with a beekeeper, and that's something that I haven't told you guys, but I've actually been trying to secure a guest on that is a bee farmer.
I think you said you were going to bring bees with you to the house. I was like,
that is actually something I've always wanted, is to have bees and have my own honeycomb.
I just don't think that's in the cards right now, though, unfortunately.
Well, hey, this guy that I had on, he's got a thing called Plan B, where he works with you, right? Well, you get the pun, of course, right? You guys are on it. Where he works with you, he puts the hive on your property, and then all you need to do is kind of tend to it, which doesn't mean you got the smoker and the whole outfit and everything, right? You just got to make sure everything's going okay, no predators. And then I think he does a 30-70 split of the honey. So you get 30% and he harvests the other 70%. That's a way to get into beekeeping without the investment.
That's awesome.
And
That is
Pat,
really cool.
This is a huge stigma among bees. Not to be confused with hornets. Bees are so gentle and they're kind.
No, I know. I just didn't
pet
think you were at a
bees.
place where you could take care of bees right now.
I can
That's
take
more
care of
what I meant.
myself. No, I can't.
I'm not
take care
scared
of
of the
myself.
Exactly.
bees.
But the problem is that Chandler told me if I were to get a pet, that he would let it die if I had to go out of town for business. He actually said that. So I doubt my bees would still be there. Chandler had a friend who had a bird, and he just would try to open the cage and let the bird fly free. So I'm sure that my bees wouldn't be there if I live with Chandler. So
You're painting Chandler a really bad light. Chandler doesn't like kill animals or anything.
no,
He's not
he
like,
just
he doesn't
makes
have like
it
the
so
beginning.
they don't live anymore.
It's not like the beginning of like a serial kill or anything. He's not doing that.
He just doesn't like.
No.
I mean,
Well,
maybe.
you guys don't know Chandler that
Well, the
well.
bees kind of take care of themselves.
That's
It's not
true,
like
yeah.
a dog where you have to walk them 3 times a day. You know, the
Like, guys, I gotta go walk my bees. I gotta walk my bees.
little stroller kind of going down the
Yeah,
street.
but we've all seen the bee movie. We know how important bees are and how important honey is. There's so many honey farms around here.
There
There's
are
a lot of hives and honey farms, and people don't even realize all the stuff that bees do and that honey provides the food community. It's insane.
Well, and bees just with pollination, and the guest that we had on was talking about the the bee colony disease and some of those things. They're not quite sure what's causing it yet. They're seeing a rebound in some areas, not so much in others. They think it's related to pesticides in the foods, but they're not quite sure yet. But that's one of the issues that he's dealing with. And there are people that actually take hives and go around the country so these bees can pollinate. Different farms, I've read a lot of stories.
That's
It's
where we're
really
at. There's
fascinating.
like not enough bees to do it naturally, so they have to like tour bees around.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what's happening now, but hopefully they can find the issue that's causing the bee colony collapse syndrome and overcome it. And it's not so much of an issue here, but I've read about, flatbed trucks out in California, and actually one of them was actually stolen. That's how valuable these beehives are.
Jeez, wow.
There's a great article in the New Yorker. Oh, it was fantastic.
People are stealing bees?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Not around
Very
here.
odd.
Yeah. But then, of course, you can take bees. This guy that came on the show, he brought some samples, which is another great part of having the show, right? They put beehives in a red raspberry field. So when the honey came, it had this real slight hint of red raspberry.
That's incredible.
Oh, my God.
That's all you need to tell me to make me a future beekeeper.
It was
man.
sublime.
What's this gentleman's name? And how do we get to his farm?
It's Planet Bee. I mean,
Planet Bee?
yeah, he
Planet
has his
Bee.
own honey, but I don't know what's in your backyard. But,
I need some Plan B. Pat, maybe we could.
Yeah, Plan B.
Maybe.
So I want to do something really quick. I want to do kind of like, I'm going to say a restaurant and you're going to say a couple of things about them and we'll move on to the next
You got it.
restaurant. Okay, because there's so many restaurants I want to touch on, so many great people that have provided us with some amazing
So
food.
this is the lightning round.
It's kind of like the lightning round. So first, we got Grill 3501.
Oh, nice food. Been there forever. Really nice addition that they put on 4 or 5 years ago, kind of outdoor setting. They've been one of the stalwarts of the fine dining in this area. And I haven't been up to Zest yet, but I've heard really good things.
Savory Grill.
One of my favorites. Known Sean forever. He's one of the most knowledgeable, but at the same time outgoing and gregarious chefs you'll ever see, with a big smile and a warm laugh. Best creme brulee I have had anywhere in this country.
Yakos.
Ooh, Yakko's Pete's and Potts hot dogs. Which one is your favorite?
Is there a front runner?
I have to say I'm not a hot dog guy. I've only ever had Yakos. But so Yakos is my favorite.
Okay, so which one was the next one that I wanted to talk about? Oh, this is one I've been hearing so much about. Aman's Artisan Indian Cuisine.
Yeah, he's up in Palmer Township and is going to be opening in Easton, right across from the Easton Public Market in the next couple of months. It's been a little longer than he had expected to open, but he has the traditional Indian type things, but also things that you don't ordinarily see other places. So a little bit more creative. That's why he has the Indian bistro. It's not just a regular Indian restaurant.
Aman's, I'm going to be there very soon because Indian
most
food is my
definitely.
favorite. So get ready for me. Roasted, which I've also been hearing a lot about, and their ever-changing menu.
Oh, roasted's great. In fact, we talked about how I usually don't go to breakfast. The last breakfast I had out was at Roasted, one of the big bowls, which is great. I love the vegetable chili that they have there, and they also have a really good chickpea salad. So a lot of good vegan options. Really good vibe in there too. Really friendly neighborhood place.
Okay. Galen Glen Winery.
Yeah.
Which is cool. If you've been there, if anyone has the chance to take a wine tour there and see the entire thing and go to that winery, it's amazing.
What I'm going to say, not just about Galen Glen, but about wineries in the Lehigh Valley, don't discount them because they're not from Oregon or California or France. Don't expect to get a good Cabernet or a real strong Merlot, but think about the grapes that grow really well here. So, think about Riesling, think about Chambourcin, think about a Pinot Gris or some other things. The things that grow really well in this area are produced very well in the Lehigh Valley. And that's not just Galen Glen, Topolino, Folino, Pinnacle Ridge. There are a lot of people producing some really good wine in this area.
Excellent. Well, the last thing I just want to ask you is, please fill us in on any restaurants that we didn't talk about, anything you wanted to mention on restaurants, wineries, distilleries that you just have to give a shout out to.
Yeah. New place in the Easton Public Market, Modern Crumb. She's a baker, which you're saying, what's so special about being a baker? Well, this is someone who actually came back to this area because they knew Chef Chismar. Okay, she used to work at Belit for a little bit. She spent 5 years out in California working for Chef Thomas Keller, that owns the French Laundry. This is one of the most prestigious restaurants in the area, and she was the head baker at Bouchon, which was his bakery. So she learned from some of the best, and now she's back here in the Lehigh Valley. And her pain au chocolat, and her croissants are just to die for. I brought one home to my wife and she said, "Where did you get this? This is amazing." And I told her, and I think what you're starting to see now is that these talented chefs are bringing people back to the Valley. So you had Katie from Modern Crumb come back because Chef Chismar is here. You had a really high quality brewery like Funk, and they start spinning off places like the Separatist, where Joe, who is the head brewer there, you're starting to see that. And that's how you have a big, vibrant food scene where things happen organically.
That's awesome that you say that, because we talk to a very wide variety of people that cover a wide variety of fields. And what we're seeing more and what people are really trying to do is bringing people back to the Valley with, taking what they've learned elsewhere and then bringing it back because they love it here. And I don't know, man. And I don't know how long it might take, maybe 10, 20 years, but this could be an amazing place in the country with all of the arts that are coming back and the food that's coming back and stuff like that. It's exciting.
We're already starting to get there. We're so close. I mean, we just had the Lehigh Valley Food and Wine Festival, and Buddy from Cake Boss was there, and Emerald Lagasse, who is my personal hero ever since I was a very small little girl. Bam, I would watch him every single night. I think it's already happening, and we're already seeing that in that level of celebrity, but also those unknowns are starting to come back here and lay down those roots.
Well, and it's like that with almost any metropolitan area. I mean, there's a reason why Nashville is a country music capital of the country, because people go there because it has a reputation, and that reputation grows. And you're starting to see that in the Valley when it comes to food, when you have national caliber people like Chef Chismar here. Other people want to come learn from him. They want to compete with him, even though it's a very friendly type of competition. And then the other good thing that's happening in the Valley, in my 25, 30 years here, it's become a lot more diverse. So you're seeing a whole lot of ethnic restaurants. I mean, we have Turkish, there's all sorts of Middle Eastern, you have Thai, you have Korean. There's a Venezuelan place opening in Allentown. I mean, Venezuelan, there's a El Salvador restaurant in Bethlehem. I mean, pretty much every ethnicity is represented here in the Valley, which wasn't the case back in the 1990s when I moved here. And I think that's really exciting as well. You don't need to go down to Philly. In fact, my wife and I, when we 15 years ago, we wanted to celebrate something big, we'd go down to Philly for a nice meal. And now we don't even think about it. There are places in the Valley that we haven't gone to yet because there's so many different options. And that's just exciting. It draws more people in.
I think that really goes along with the tourism. We have places like Jim Thorpe and the Lehigh Valley and Bethlehem that are bringing in so many tourists. We've got the hotels and the casinos, and that's bringing in more money for the Valley. And I think that all of these restaurants and new restaurateurs are really doing their part to bring in more tourism for the Valley in their own unique way.
Completely. I look at our Friday night. Last Friday, we went to Bond Place Brewing on the south side. Went to U&TEA for dinner and went over to Steel Stacks for some live music. Yeah. And I'm walking back to the car with my wife saying, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have done this. Because none of those three places were there.
Right?
They were all walkable.
That's crazy.
You know?
That's amazing. That's so cool.
Yeah. And, luckily, you guys are all relatively young. You're growing up at the right time.
Right.
There were a couple of pretty lean years here in the Valley, but you look at all the entertainment options, the food options, the beer options here, and for a metropolitan area our size, it is as good as you can find anywhere. And I travel a lot too, and it's right up there.
That's awesome. That's awesome to hear.
Unfortunately, we're about out of time.
No.
Yeah.
So
So
if
much
there's
more
anything
to talk about.
you want to shout out your show or any social media or anything?
Oh, again, the show's on WDIY. We air the first Monday of every month at 6:00. But you can also find it on a podcast on Apple iTunes and Google Play. It's called The Inside Dish. So if you search WDIY and Inside Dish, you'll get a nice little feed in your podcast player.
Mike, thank you so much. This was awesome. We got such a great insight on some of the places that are around here. Just good advice in general. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thanks for letting me express my love of food.
You definitely have to come back because this is not enough time to talk about all the great stuff in the Lehigh Valley, and we didn't even really get to touch on all those amazing.
We'll do a whole hour
ethnic
on
foods.
beer. How about that?
Oh, that would be really nice.
I'm just going to shout us out.
All right, so Sly Elliott on everything. Follow Lab212 on Instagram, on Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube, and the Poorly Edited Podcast on Facebook. Please make sure you check us out live 4:00 every Monday, except for the last week or so.
4 Mondays, whatever.
Well-
no. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, reruns.
It's not
And check out the new episode that's about to come out, BCPI today.
Yeah.
The BCPI episode that's going to come out on YouTube. So
And
check
listen
that
to
out.
this one twice.
Yes.
Yeah, listen to this one twice for sure. Thank you so much, Michael. Mike,
It's a
I'm
pleasure.
sorry,
Michael. That's
Mike
fine, yeah.
Drabenstott of the Inside Dish, WDIY. You've been absolutely amazing. I can't wait to have you back because I know I want to have you back to talk
Anytime.
about more. Thank you guys so much for listening.
And intro and outro music by Mungo. Check out their EP. Not Mungo, geez. Food Truck. Check out their EP.
Wow.
It's great.
You're from Harlem. I wish I could call